you. When someone you thought would be in your life forever suddenly leaves, it is easy to mistake that absence as punishment. It feels like rejection, abandonment, or even betrayal by God. The human heart naturally clings to what it knows, you. Even when what it knows is damaging, we measure love by presence, by closeness, by the promise of permanence. And when that is disrupted, we interpret the disruption as loss. Yet from a higher perspective, what we often call loss is actually a form of preservation. God removes not to wound us, but to shield us. He takes away not because we are unworthy, but because he who knows our worth cannot survive in the wrong hands. Think about the nature of divine vision. God sees further than we can. He perceives intentions before they are revealed. He understands the unfolding consequences of choices we have not yet made. Why? You may only see the surface, the charming words, the good intentions, the affectionate moments. God sees the patterns hidden beneath. He sees the future conflicts, the erosion of your self-esteem, the compromises of your integrity that would eventually demand more from you than you should ever give. He sees the cracks forming long before they shatter into pain. And so when he removes a man from your life, he is acting as both protector and guide, intervening to spare you from wounds you don't yet know you're walking toward. From a psychological standpoint, it's important to recognize how attachment works. Our brains are wired to hold on to familiar bonds, even if those bonds are unhealthy. We confuse attachment with destiny, mistaken emotional dependency for true love. This is why God's intervention can feel so devastating. It interrupts not only the relationship, but also the patterns of comfort and familiarity we've built around it. But that interruption is necessary because left to our own devices, we often lack the courage to walk away from what we know, even if it is slowly destroying us. God does for us what we cannot do for ourselves. He breaks the chain. And here's the paradox. We cry out in confusion when someone leaves, not realizing that had they stayed, the cost to our spirit would have been far greater. What looks like subtraction is actually addition in disguise. What feels like rejection is protection from deeper rejection that would have scarred you in ways you may never have recovered from. When you look back at certain people who left your life, you begin to see the wisdom in their absence. What you once begged God to restore, you later thank him for removing. Philosophically, this brings us to the concept of trust. Trusting God means acknowledging that his interventions are not random. They are deliberate acts of love. The human mind resists this truth because we crave certainty and control. We want the blueprint, the full explanation, the visible proof that things will work out. But faith demands a surrender of that need to control. Faith says, I don't understand this right now, but I believe it's for my good. That surrender is not weakness, it is strength, because it requires us to move against the grain of our emotions and rely on something deeper than feelings, conviction. Let's not overlook the emotional dimension. When God removes someone, it hurts. There's no denying the sting of absence, the void where presence once lived. Grief is real. Even when grieving someone who wasn't right for you, and God does not expect you to bypass that grief. What he asks is that you interpret it differently, that you see pain not as evidence of abandonment, but as a necessary process in the rewiring of your heart. Healing often begins with breaking, and the heart must first fracture in order to be reshaped in alignment with truth. It's also important to see the moral weight in this. If God allowed every relationship you desired, you would be enslaved to your own short-sightedness. You would be bound by whims, by fleeting attractions, by people who did not carry the capacity to honor you. His removal is an act of moral clarity. It is his way of saying you are worth more than what you're willing to settle for. I love you too much to let you destroy yourself. That is not punishment. That is mercy. And when you think about it, the ultimate sign of God's love is not in what he gives, but in what he withholds. He withholds certain people, certain paths, certain outcomes because he knows they would compromise your soul. You don't need every door to open. You don't need every person to stay. You need the right door, the right person, the right moment. And sometimes the only way to reach that alignment is for God to close the doors you keep trying to force open. So the next time you find yourself mourning the exit of someone who seemed essential to your story, pause and reframe the moment. Ask yourself, what unseen danger did God just shield me from? What silent betrayal did he stop before it could unfold? What pain did he intercept on my behalf? Begin to see the absence not as a void, but as a shield, a holy act of interception that proves God's love is not passive, but fiercely active in your defense. And this is where the courage comes in. You must decide whether to interpret removal as rejection or as protection. That choice determines how you heal. If you see it as rejection, you will stay stuck in bitterness, always questioning your value. But if you see it as protection, you begin to heal with gratitude, trusting that what was taken away was never meant to define you. In the end, divine removal is one of the purest forms of love. God interrupts yours not to break you, but to rebuild you. He takes away not to empty your life, but to make room for what aligns with his vision of your future. And though your heart may ache in the moment, let this truth settle deep within you. The man who left was not meant to carry your destiny, and God loved you too much to let him stay. Closing statement. You. Sometimes the greatest blessing is not in what God places in your hands, but in what he gently takes away. If you can trust his no, you will always be ready for his greater yes. When God removes the wrong person from your life, the first thing you notice is not relief, it is emptiness. You feel the silence in your routines, the absence in your conversations, the gap in your plans for the future. It can feel like standing in a house where all the furniture has been moved out. The space feels unnatural, uncomfortable, even haunting. And it is in that discomfort that most people stumble. They rush to fill the void, to silence the emptiness, to replace what was lost with anything that resembles presence. But what if that space is not meant to be filled so quickly? What if the silence is intentional? The truth is, God creates space not to torment, but to transform you. When the wrong man leaves, there is a vacuum left behind. But that vacuum is not random. It is the precise environment required for healing. Think of it this way. When a wound is left untreated, it furs. It only heals when you clean it, when you allow air to touch it, when you create space for the body to repair itself. The same is true emotionally. The absence of someone who once occupied your attention is not simply an empty place. It is an opening, a sacred invitation for restoration. Psychologists often talk about the way relationships shape identity. When you are deeply entangled with someone, especially someone who is not aligned with your worth, their presence becomes a mirror that distorts how you see yourself. You begin to measure your value through their approval, their attention, their affection, or worse, their lack of it. That distortion becomes so ingrained that you cannot tell where you end and they begin. When God removes such a person, he is not only removing them, he is removing the distortion. But the removal leaves behind a space that can feel unbearable because you are suddenly forced to face yourself without their shadow. And this is where healing begins. In that empty space, God invites you to rediscover who you are outside of anyone else's opinion. You learn to sit with your own voice again. You remember dreams that were buried, passions that were silenced, strengths that were dismissed. Healing doesn't come through rushing into another relationship or numbing the loneliness with distractions. Healing comes through accepting the space as a gift. The silence is not abandonment, it is therapy. It is God saying, be still long enough to hear me remind you of your worth. From a philosophical perspective, this moment of emptiness carries profound significance. Human beings fear the void because we equate it with lack. But in reality, the void is where creation begins. The universe itself was spoken into being from nothingness. Silence precedes music. Stillness precedes movement. Emptiness is not the absence of meaning, it is the condition in which new meaning can be formed. When God clears someone out of your life, he is returning you to the fertile soil of emptiness where something authentic can finally grow. Let's be honest, most of us resist this process. We rush back to comfort, to distraction, to noise. We say, I don't want to be alone. But what we really mean is, I don't want to face myself. And yet that self-confrontation is the only path to healing. Loneliness is not a punishment, it is a mirror. In those quiet hours when no one else is there to validate you are given the chance to build the kind of self-respect that no one can take away. You are invited to create an identity so rooted in God's affirmation that you no longer need the fragile validation of someone who could never honor your value in the first place. Think of how often people drag unhealed wounds into new relationships. They enter with scars that haven't been addressed, with insecurities that haven't been confronted, and with baggage that weighs down every new beginning. The space God creates after removal is designed to prevent this cycle. He's a heal first before you connect again. Grow whole before you give yourself away. The healing is not just for your benefit. It is for the benefit of the relationship you will one day step into. If you heal in the space, you will love from strength instead of from brokenness. There is also a psychological freedom in reclaiming space. Many people don't realize how much of their life energy is consumed by maintaining a relationship that was never meant to last. The wrong person occupies not just your time, but your thoughts, your decisions, your sense of possibility. When they are gone, the silence feels heavy at first, but over time it becomes liberating. You suddenly have room to pursue growth, to develop purpose, to reconnect with God without the constant static of misalignment. That space, if honored, becomes a sanctuary instead of a void. And here's the challenge. Will you see the space as a curse, or will you see it as a gift? If you see it as a curse, you will rush to fill it with anyone or anything repeating the same cycles of pain. But if you see it as a gift, you will embrace the silence, let it do its work, and emerge stronger, clearer, and freer than you ever imagined. This reframing is essential because it teaches us that healing is not passive, it is participatory. God may create the space, but you must decide what to do with it. Will you numb it or will you nurture it? Will you resist it or will you respect it? Healing is not something God forces upon you. It is something he invites you into. And that invitation always begins with space. So when you find yourself staring at the absence left behind, do not rush to fill it. Do not despise it. Do not call it loneliness when it is really an opportunity for intimacy with God and rediscovery of self. Sit in it long enough to let it refine you. You trust that in the quiet, unseen work is being done. Work that will not only restore your heart, but also prepare it for a love that honors the person God designed you to be. Closing statement, the emptiness left behind by the wrong person is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of your healing. Don't fear the silence. Let it shape you. Because in that sacred space, God is making you whole again. When God removes someone who is not meant for you, something begins to happen that you often don't notice right away. At first, there is pain. At first, there is longing. At first, there is the temptation to go back to reach for what has already been taken away. But as time passes, something else emerges. Your eyes start to open. Heat. The fog begins to lift. You begin to see clearly in ways you could not when you were entangled with that person. Separation creates distance, and distance creates perspective. And perspective is the birthplace of discernment. Think about how vision works. When you are too close to an object, you cannot see its shape. You cannot discern its flaws or its beauty. You are blinded by proximity. Step back and suddenly the image comes into focus. The same principle applies to relationships. When you are caught up in the presence of the wrong man, you can't always see what's happening. You excuse behaviors. You justify actions. You tell yourself stories to protect your own hope. You see what you want to see instead of what is actually there. But when God intervenes and creates separation, the closeness is broken. And from that new distance, you gain the ability to see what was hidden all along. This is why discernment so often comes after removal. While you were inside the relationship, you were emotionally invested, and emotions are powerful lenses. They don't allow you to see objectively. They bend the truth to fit your desires. You confuse attention with love, control with care, presence with commitment. But when that bond is broken, you have no choice but to face reality without the filter of emotional dependency. Suddenly, the red flags you ignored are glaring. The patterns you rationalized are undeniable. What once felt like stability now reveals itself as manipulation or neglect or simply misalignment with the life you are meant to build. This shift is not only emotional, it is deeply psychological. One of the greatest obstacles to clarity is cognitive dissonance, the human tendency to reconcile contradictions in order to preserve comfort. When someone treats you in a way that does not align with your worth, but you also need them for love, you resolve the contradiction by lowering your standards. You tell yourself, maybe this is just how love works. Maybe I'm asking for too much. Maybe if I change, things will get better. That internal negotiation clouds your discernment. It keeps you tied to something that should have been released long ago. God in his mercy disrupts that cycle. He removes the person so that the dissonance collapses and with it the false narrative. In its place comes clarity, sometimes painful but always liberating. Philosophically, this is one of the most profound aspects of divine intervention. Human beings crave certainty, but we often build certainty on illusions. We cling to what seems solid, even if it is actually hollow. When God removes the wrong man, he strips away the illusion, forcing you to confront the difference between what you thought you had and what you actually had. That confrontation is uncomfortable because it means admitting you were deceived not necessarily by malice, but by desire, by fear, by hope. Yet in admitting it, you gain something far more valuable than discernment to never repeat the same mistake again. It is no accident that many people look back on past relationships and say, I don't know how I couldn't see it. They couldn't see it because they were too close. Clarity was impossible without separation. Only distance allows the truth to reveal itself. And in that truth, you find wisdom. You learn to recognize patterns early. You begin to trust the uneasiness you once silenced. You develop the ability to distinguish between words and actions, between promises and patterns. This is discernment. The ability to separate what looks good from what is truly good, what feels right from what is actually right. And discernment is not just for your past, it is for your future. When God gives you clarity, it's not merely so you can look back with regret. It's so you can move forward with wisdom. Each revelation becomes a safeguard. You no longer fall for the same charm without substance. You no longer excuse disrespect disguised as passion. You no longer settle for attention when what you deserve is commitment. This clarity becomes armor for your heart, not to make you hard or bitter, but to make you wise and strong. But here's the challenge. Clarity is only as valuable as your willingness to act on it. Many people see the truth after separation, but instead of learning, they return. He could let loneliness override wisdom. They confuse familiarity with safety and end up back in the same cycles that God tried to free them from. Clarity without courage leads you right back into captivity. That is why discernment is both a gift and a responsibility. When God reveals, it is not for you to ignore. It is for you to respond. So ask yourself, what has separation already revealed to me that I have been afraid to admit? What patterns can I now see clearly that I once excused? What lessons am I being invited to learn not just about others, but about myself, my choices, my boundaries, my beliefs about love? These are not easy questions, but they are necessary ones. Because separation is never just about losing someone. It is about finding sight, and sight changes everything. With clear vision, you are no longer trapped in the cycle of illusions. You are no longer at the mercy of emotions that distort truth. You are no longer vulnerable to the same traps of charm without character, affection without depth. Instead, you stand in the power of discernment. You able to recognize alignment when it comes. And just as importantly, able to reject misalignment before it can take root again. Closing statement: separation may break your heart, but it also clears your eyes. And once you can see clearly, you owe it to yourself to live by that vision, never returning to the blindness that once held you captive. By the time you've walked through the pain of removal, sat in the silence of healing, and gained the clarity that separation provides, you begin to understand something profound. God never removes without purpose. His hand is not arbitrary. His timing is not careless. And his decisions are never without design. Every subtraction in your life is in service to a greater addition. Every no is the groundwork for a deeper west. And when God takes away the wrong man, it is not to leave you empty forever. It is to prepare you for alignment with what is truly his best for you. Preparation is not always glamorous. It doesn't always look like progress. In fact, it often looks like waiting, pruning, refining. But preparation is sacred because it is what ensures that when the right person arrives, you will recognize them, value them, and stand ready to build something enduring. Without preparation, even the right relationship can collapse under the weight of unresolved wounds and unlearned lessons. God in his wisdom ensures you don't miss his best by rushing ahead with less. From a psychological standpoint, preparation is about rewiring patterns. If the wrong man taught you to doubt yourself, preparation restores confidence. If he normalized dysfunction, preparation redefines your standards. If he left you with fear, bitterness, or mistrust, preparation softens your heart so you can love again without suspicion. Without this process, you risk carrying the residue of the wrong relationship into the right one. Preparation ensures you don't sabotage the blessing God intends to give you. Philosophically, we might think of this in terms of alignment. Alignment means that two paths converge in harmony, not in conflict. God's best for you is never just about compatibility on the surface. It is about congruence at the core. It is about character, values, vision, and faith. The wrong man can match your loneliness, but never your destiny. The right one, however, doesn't just fit your heart. He fits your purpose, and that level of alignment requires readiness on both sides. God may be preparing you while also preparing someone else, weaving together two journeys so that when you meet, it is not chaos but clarity. But here is the key. If you are still clinging to what God removed, you will not have the capacity to receive what he intends to bring you. Imagine trying to hold on a broken glass while waiting for God to place a diamond in your hand. You cannot grasp both. One must be released for the other to be received. This is why preparation requires trust and surrender. Trust that what was taken was never meant to carry you forward, and surrender to the possibility that what is coming is far greater than what was lost. Preparation also involves redefining your vision of love. Many settle for intensity and mistake it for intimacy. Many settle for consistency and mistake it for commitment. Many settle for attraction and mistake it for alignment. But God's best will not only love you, he will respect you. He will not only desire you, he will honor you. He will not only walk with you, he will walk toward God with you. And in order to recognize that, you must first train your eyes to see the difference between superficial connection and spiritual alignment. That discernment is sharpened in the season of preparation. Think of how a gardener prepares soil before planting. The old roots are cleared, the ground is broken, nutrients are added, and only then is the seed placed in the earth. If the soil is not prepared, the seed cannot thrive. The same is true in relationships. Your heart is the soil, and God's preparation is the tilling, the clearing, the restoring, so that when the right person comes, the relationship can grow strong and healthy. Without preparation, even a good seed planted in neglected soil will wither. This is where many struggle because preparation feels like delay. You ask God, why am I still waiting? Why am I still alone? But waiting is not wasted time. It is invested time. It is the season where God aligns you not just with another person, but with yourself, with your calling with him. If you can embrace the process instead of despising it, you will discover that you are not merely waiting for someone else. You are becoming someone else, someone wiser, someone stronger, someone ready. And when God's best arrives, it won't feel forced. It won't feel like you are constantly trying to convince or prove or beg for love. It will feel like alignment. Two lives moving in the same direction. Two hearts honoring the same God. Two souls committed not just to each other, but to a shared purpose. This doesn't mean it will be perfect, but it will be right. And you will know it is right because it won't cost you your peace to keep it. So the question is not whether God will align you with his best. The question is whether you will allow the preparation to do its work so that when his best comes, you can receive it without sabotage, without fear, without residue from the past. Too many people waste the season of preparation by looking backward instead of forward. Don't let that be you. Let the removal make you grateful. Let the silence make you whole. Let the clarity make you wise. And let the preparation make you ready. Because readiness is the bridge between loss and blessing. It is the difference between repeating cycles and stepping into new seasons. It is the sign that you have not only survived removal but have been transformed by it. Closing statement. When God removes the wrong man, it is never to leave you empty. It is to ready you for the one who will honor your worth and walk in step with your destiny. Don't fear the preparation. Embrace it because it is the final proof that his best is on the